Hello and welcome back to the Champions League preview podcast from sportsbet.io. It feels strange to say this, but we're looking at Thursday's action now, and we'll start with Atalanta against Arsenal. Atalanta, of course, did something incredible last year, and I mean they beat Bayer Leverkusen, but they also, of course, went on to win in Europe. They have lost some key names so far this season, but they take on an Arsenal side who, after that North London derby, may, Rob, be tough to stop.
Yeah, I was at the game on Sunday, Pete, and Arsenal, despite the absentees, Mikel Moreno and Martin Odegaard injured, Declan Rice suspended. He'll come back in, of course.
Yeah.
They did set up very well. There was a big, it's so interesting watching these coaches who tailor their tactics so specifically for the game. And in the case of Mikel Arteta, he played this kind of 4-4-2 thing, or where Havertz and Trossard played up front together, but they were kind of withdrawn, playing as 10s, and knowing that he lost the mobility of Rice, of the technical brilliance and fight of Odegaard, he just thought, I'm just going to play a double pivot in midfield. I'm going to sit quite deep. Unless I think I can press Spurs on the edge of the area, I'm going to sit extremely deep, and then we're just going to use the pace of Saka and Martinelli and hit on the counter-attack. We're going to be a threat from set pieces. That's how they scored the winning goal through Gabriel. And that game was a big one for Arsenal. I think Arsenal come into this game, Pete, in good spirits because it was off the back of the Brighton draw. They were aware that if they lost that game to their rivals, brutal enough, then lose away at City, that's their next Premier League game, they'd be 8 points behind City.
Yeah.
You're behind the 8 ball and then some. At the start of the season. So it was a massive victory in the context of the season, admittedly only the fourth game of the season, but an impressive one, and having a fresh Declan Rice to bring back into midfield after some impressive fixtures for England is going to be massive for the Gunners. Team selection is going to be interesting because they play City on Sunday, and this is the Thursday game, and for people thinking, is this going to be the norm? No, this is the only Thursday of Champions League football that's going to be this season because it's getting its own week for match week 1. Does Mikel Arteta go as strong as he can? Given that Odegaard and Moreno, I imagine, are out. I haven't seen an updated team news on either with their respective shoulder and ankle injuries. Does he go as strong as he can? If that's the case, he's playing an extremely tough game Thursday night, less than 72 hours before going to the Etihad. So, a difficult one for Arteta, and he does not have a big squad. Zinchenko was injured at the weekend. Gabriel Jesus has just come back from injury. Tomiyasu was out at the weekend. Calafiori missed the weekend because of an injury he picked up with Italy. Doesn't have a lot of options. So a difficult one for the Arsenal manager, no doubt.
We're going to see some young players, I think, possibly over the next few weeks anyway, the likes of Nwaneri, which I always struggle to say, and another very talented players who we're going to see more of. But it's really interesting with Arsenal. I mean, what interests me a lot here, and again, Atalanta, no jokes at all. We know what they won last year. We know what Gasperini can do. We saw him outthink a number of big managers last season, and he really did, particularly with Liverpool, completely outthought them and outthought Jurgen Klopp last season. But Arsenal 1.91, which, as a bettor myself, I'm looking at that going, well, as good as Atalanta are, Arsenal at 1.91 does look very good. Like you say, it might be dependent on team news. We don't quite know what we're going to get from Arsenal yet. Just very quickly on Atalanta, I mean, again, this is a big year for them in the Champions League, big financial year for them. They lost a couple of key names, but they're still looking pretty solid so far.
Yeah, Toon Koopmeiners going to Juventus is a big loss in midfield, but they got huge money for them, and they could reinvest that in Matteo Retegui from Genoa, so get a new forward in. They could make Charles de Ketelara's really successful loan from Milan a permanent deal for around 25 million euros. So that's come in. He scored at the weekend. They played in their first ever UEFA Super Cup, lost to Real Madrid. One player they're missing, and it's a big loss, really. Let's be honest. A man who downed Liverpool last season is Scamacca. Picked up an ACL injury in early August. I think the initial prognosis was 6 months out, surgery required. So they are missing a really key player. But, as you mentioned, right to flag Gasperini's tactical chops, he could come up with something absolutely extraordinary. They killed Liverpool at Anfield last season. They can do it to anyone. Beat Fiorentina at the weekend. Adamola Lookman, the hero from Dublin, scoring in that game. So, Atalanta will feel in good shape as well going into that match against the Gunners.
And just on the Champions League, I mean, this is probably the trickiest game for Arteta simply because of the game that comes after it, like you say, with the City game at the weekend. But a win here, I suppose, does at least get them going in a competition that a few Arsenal fans might fancy they could still challenge in, particularly in the new format.
Well, I was looking at their run last year and thinking, oh, they've got momentum. They won that penalty shootout in the round of 16. Yeah. First, think how they started that Bayern quarterfinal first leg, absolutely all over them. And then Bayern just hit them with the 1-2 sucker punch, 2 goals at the Emirates, and it changed the context of the tie. Arsenal couldn't quite work their way back into it. They struggled in Munich. And maybe there was a little bit of that rawness about the competition to them in that game against Bayern. Arsenal were definitely a better team than Bayern Munich last season, without a doubt. But there was something about the Allianz Arena, the way Bayern played, that saw them over the line in that quarterfinal game. So it's still a group that's new to this competition. But that's even truer for Atalanta. So, I'd still be thinking with rotation. They've signed Raheem Sterling. Gabriel Jesus is back from injury. I'm sure they'll freshen up things in attack. Ethan Nwaneri was really good off the bench. Looked super tidy. I don't think he'd hesitate actually starting him in a game like this. But if he gets a win here, what a 5 days for Mikel Arteta and what a 5 days for Arsenal before playing the champions.
And that's why Rob is the commentator and the expert, because he can pronounce names properly. It's also the other thing.
That's taken a bit of practice, that one, mate, I have to admit.
But even then, absolutely nailed it. It was beautiful to watch. Right, on to Atletico Madrid against Leipzig. This, for me, is one of the best games of all 3 days. And I don't quite know why this is chiming with me in the way it is, but I'm looking at this and going, if I can watch one, I might actually watch this one. Atletico Madrid in this market 1.8, Leipzig at 4.3. Atletico Madrid just simply not conceding at the moment, absolutely walling every single game. And while they did draw against Union at the weekend, Leipzig, they've been playing brilliant football. They've been scoring a lot of goals. They invested in really smart signings despite losing a big one over the course of the summer as well. I really like Leipzig, and I'm fighting every urge in my body not to leap onto Leipzig at 4.3, just simply because they have to go to Atletico Madrid. This is a great-looking game for me, this one, Rob.
Agree, yeah. I mean, from Leipzig's point of view, you're right to mention Dani Olmo gone, scoring for Barcelona at the weekend. Šeško stayed, Xavi returned, and they signed Nusa, who scored on his cup and league debut for Leipzig. So they have recruited well. I'll try to temper your hopes for a Leipzig victory by saying that I thought Atletico were really good against Valencia at the weekend. Carved out some really nice openings. Notable that Conor Gallagher, that was a lovely goal actually.
It was,
from Atletico, finished off by Conor Gallagher. His first goal for Atletico. Julian Alvarez is up and running for them as well. He scored in added time in that game. There was a fluency about their attack that I liked, and they have been freshened up. And there's some nice little links between the club. You got Alexander Sørloth, former Leipzig player, now Atletico's number 9, wearing the number 9 shirt there. You've got Artur Vermeeren, who's actually on loan from Atletico to Leipzig. I think it's one of those where the move will be made permanent. But a really intriguing game. But I'm edging towards Atletico based purely on what I saw at the weekend, including Antoine Griezmann getting amongst the goals again.
Yeah, I mean, not conceding at the moment. I mean, the only thing I'd say about that Valencia result is that it's Valencia, I suppose, in many ways. And obviously, 400 million euros in debt and bottom of the table, and it's not looking good at all at the Mestalla. Can't move to their new ground. And I don't know, I think that you and me at the moment, Rob, would put up at least a decent fight against Valencia, although we'd still lose.
Fair enough, Leipzig to win.
I love the idea of 2 people turning up and going, right, against professional footballers and going, right, come on, we're going to take you on. You're 400 million euros in debt. Oh, we're 9-0 down already. We're already losing. Monaco against Barcelona. Now, look, we can talk about every single European side in the world, and we probably don't have time for that. But Barcelona 1.75 here. I think across Europe right now, Barcelona are the most impressive side. Some of that is to do with the fact that we had relatively low expectations for them going into the season. But right now, they're scoring tons of goals. Dani Olmo is fit and scoring goals, as we mentioned earlier on. Hansi Flick has got this side absolutely flying.
He does, yeah. 5 wins from 5. They're undeniable at the moment, and they were really impressive. I mean, Girona, despite all the change in the summer, are still a tremendous team.
Yeah.
And Lamine Yamal, in particular, his first half goals were just so good. Dani Olmo's goal was ridiculous. It was a signing that makes so much sense. Yeah. And then Pedri, he's back and fit and scoring. And, they've still got the likes of Rob Lewandowski, who was built for this competition. They're still extremely strong. There's things about Monaco I like, of course. Finished 3rd last season in France, and they've got players with Champions League experience like Minamino and Denis Zakaria. They won at the weekend, a 3-0 victory. So not an easy game for Barcelona, but yeah, I'd be edging towards them too.
There's a really interesting interview with Cesc Fabregas, if people want to go and have a look on social media to fish it out. And we're not going to go again into too much detail, but talking about how actually Barcelona's financial problems has led to this blooming of all these talented young players, and that Hansi Flick is managing to marshal all of those talented young players simply because they had to. Okay, they've been able to spend a little bit of money here and there, but ultimately they had to build a squad of these young players. And all of a sudden, you give loads of game time to the likes of Pedri or to the likes of Lamine Yamal, and all of a sudden they start to grow together. And Barcelona, over the next couple of years, as long as they can sort themselves out behind the scenes, are going to be devastating, I think, Rob.
And it is also a source of revenue because they're giving a lot of these academy players minutes, putting them on a stage. They're doing something, and then they're catching the eye of the European clubs. So when they're needing those 12, those 20 million euro sales in the academy, it's crucial. But crucially, they're playing nice football at the minute. I wasn't sure about the matchup of Hansi Flick and Barcelona, but so far so good.
Yeah, although there's still time to go, and with Hansi Flick, you never quite know if it's going to remain nice and settled. Right, let's finish off here with Feyenoord against Bayer Leverkusen. Lever 1.77. There was always going to be, Rob, a little bit of a come down after last season because it was just so incredible. They then obviously lose in the final of a big European competition. They start the season okay, then they lose to Leipzig, battered Hoffenheim at the weekend. This game's got goals written all over it for me.
Yeah, they scored 4 at the weekend away at Hoffenheim. Victor Boniface getting a couple. Martin Terrier, new signing, getting amongst the goals as well. It was the nature of the Leipzig defeat, of course, that stunned people because Leverkusen were 2 up and kind of had done to them what they had done to so many, with Leipzig coming back, scoring 3 without reply and winning the game. But again, I really like their summer business. Yeah. They kept so many of their key players. Xabi Alonso, I think, not only in part stayed to try and defend that title and see if he could challenge Bayern again in that way, because he could have gone anywhere this summer, Xabi Alonso. Every club wanted him. But also to see what he could do with this group. And I think that group was convinced to stick together mainly because let's see what we can do in the Champions League. Let's see if we can hurt teams. So on paper, again, for Leverkusen, they'd be looking at this, despite the self-evident strengths of Feyenoord, thinking this is the kind of game we want to win if we want to get out of the new league phase. Yeah,
Leverkusen, I think are a really good bet at the weekend. On Thursday, 1.77 for that. I think is a really good way. And Rob, thank you so much for your expertise on this week's Champions League action. Any plans for Friday, Saturday, Sunday of the week? Anything fun ahead?
I think I'm just going to go and get in bed on Friday after all the games and just sleep for kind of 36 hours or something like that. Is that acceptable?
Listen, it's up to you, mate. I can't control what you do.